My predictions video last year ended up having an accuracy of 23.4%, which is honestly pretty good and definitely not hugely inflated by the predictable sub-theme releases and the fact that I guessed the kind of obvious UCS set correctly. At least I can finally stop guessing the UCS X-Wing. Looking forward to next year, it doesn't actually seem like there's much going on in terms of shows coming out, which, when combined with LEGO's general trend of front-loading the year with original trilogy stuff, means that probably most of the sets will be original trilogy in the upcoming wave. The real challenge with predicting the winter wave is with the sub-theme releases. In previous years, it was pretty predictable with 2 or 3 helmets and last year's 2 dioramas, but there are rumors that the helmet collection will actually be discontinued and replaced by the Midi-Scale collection, starting with the Executor. I have an interesting prediction for that, but I'll get to that later. But for now, let's just jump into it with what I think will be the cheapest set of the wave. I think this will either be a Ghost Microfighter or a T6 Shuttle Microfighter based on the Ahsoka show for €10. My bet is on the T6 Shuttle with the same Ahsoka minifigure from the larger set coming out later this year. My reasoning is that the show will be relevant enough, it's a ship never made into a Microfighter before, and it would be a cheap way to get an Ahsoka figure for kids who can't afford the larger Playscale version of the set. I also think this will be the only Microfighter of this wave. Next up, I think we'll get a Battlepack next January for the same increased €21 price as the 332nd Battlepack, and I think it will be a Wolfpack Clone Trooper Battlepack with 3 Wolfpack clones and a Commander Wolf minifigure. This may sound like wishful thinking, but my reasoning is that LEGO seem very eager to put out a bunch of clone legions and their commanders. Within recent memory, we'd have gotten Commander Cody, Captain Rex, Captain Vaughn, and Commander Fox, so it's not that much of a stretch to think that LEGO would use this opportunity to give us a Commander Wolf figure too. I say Wolfpack and Commander Wolf specifically because I think it's probably the most popular and in-demand clone legion that LEGO hasn't remade yet. The regular Wolfpack troopers from 2014 are going for €60ish these days each, which surely means it's on, if not next up on their list. They also seem weirdly reluctant to do just a regular plain Phase 2 battle pack for some reason, so even though that would be the obvious choice, I'm sticking to this slightly bolder prediction. I think for this wave there will be 3 conventional playsets. The cheapest conventional playset here I think will simply be an A-Wing. I think it'll be blue as seen in the Ahsoka trailer, cost €35 and come with 2 minifigures, then being a regular A-Wing pilot and one of those old fellas who get stabbed in the trailer. Now, am I confident in this pick? Absolutely not. Truthfully, I was just watching the Ahsoka trailer on repeat trying to find some ship that could work here, and the A-Wing is the best I got. Could definitely see it happening though. I think the mid-priced set of this wave will be an E-Wing Starfighter as also seen in the Ahsoka trailer. When compared to Jack 14's Stealth Starfighter from 2013, which I think was also based on the E-Wing, I think it'll be a smaller, more densely detailed ship with I think 4 minifigures, then being an E-Wing pilot who I imagine will be visually identical to most other pilots in the New Republic, Zeb in his New Republic uniform, that astromech from the Ahsoka trailer, and Sabine. I think it'll also come with a small speeder build and cost €65. The reason I think this will be a set is as straightforward as it was in the trailer and I have nothing else to go off. Like I said, I'm not exactly brimming with confidence with these. I think the big set for the January wave will be the, what looks to be, modified Imperial shuttle used by Baylan and Shin in the trailer for the Ahsoka show. I think it'll be €100 and include 4 minifigures, namely Baylan's skull, Shin Hati, Ahsoka, and Thrawn. I don't fully believe in the minifigure selection here at all, to be honest. I feel like most of them are already in a set we know is coming out before this, and it'd be unusual for LEGO to not include some exclusive figure to bump up the value of the set. But I simply can't think of anyone else besides Thrawn to include, but it doesn't make sense to include him here either, so I don't know. However, the scale of the ship is definitely doable at this price. I fully believe that LEGO will make a load of sets based on Ahsoka too, and I don't think there's any rumors to suggest it'll show up any earlier than this. Again, not super confident in this, but there's definitely a world where it happens. You may also notice that all of these playsets were from the Ahsoka show, even though I said they'll probably be original trilogy. Well, sorry, but trying to come up with original trilogy ships at this price point that haven't been done recently is like coming up with a new color. I simply couldn't do it. I don't even blame them for making Luke's land speeders all the time, because goddamn, what else is there? Realistically, I do think 2 of the 3 playsets will be based on some Disney Plus show like Ahsoka, The Mandalorian, or even Skeleton Crew, and that last set will probably be some hyper niche vehicle from the original trilogy like the Hoth ATST last year. I can't predict what that could be right now though, so I'll stick to my guesses. I mentioned at the beginning that there are rumors that the helmet collection will be replaced by the Midi-Scale sets. I don't think this will be the case. I do think the Midi-Scale collection will become its own unofficial sub-theme, but I don't think it'll replace the helmets. I think it'll replace the brick-built characters sub-theme that was unofficially running for a few years now. With that in mind, I think we will get 3 helmets again this wave, and starting with the one I'm least confident in, I think the first will be Moff Gideon's helmet from the Mandalorian in Season 3. Truthfully, I think this is much more likely to be an 8080 pilot helmet because that was rumoured like 2 waves ago now, but I don't want to reuse guesses multiple times in a row, so I picked this because it's at least new and interesting. I think it could fit really well alongside the Din helmet and the Dark Trooper helmet, and it has a distinct style and shape that would make for a really unique and good looking set. The next helmet is the one I am easily the most confident in for a number of reasons, and that's Bo-Katan's helmet. It's probably the single most iconic named character helmet that they haven't made yet. It's a new design with the what I'm calling female Mandalorian visor shape, and Bo-Katan was the main character in The Mandalorian Season 3, so they can easily justify it that way, and it would count as another Clone Wars era set for fans of that too. Mostly though, it just feels right. I can see it happening. I'd actually be really surprised if this prediction doesn't come true. The final helmet is one I'm less confident in than Bo-Katan, but still much more confident in than Moff Gideon, and that's Sabine Wren's helmet. It's actually the same base shape more or less as Bo-Katan's one, so they could do what they did with the TIE Fighter and Stormtrooper helmets from the first wave, Din and Boba's helmets from later waves, or even the Venom and Carnage helmets, where they just take a base design and slightly modify it to create a new set. I also think that the Ahsoka show is going to be huge for LEGO Star Wars, and Sabine's helmet is the perfect opportunity to create an amazing 18+ set for the show. I think the Diorama collection will continue as normal with 2 sets. I think both of these will be original trilogy because there's a lot more ground to cover with them before they branch into the more interesting Star Wars stuff. The first diorama is one I am extremely confident in, to a point that I feel lazy for including it as a suggestion, and that's a Jabba's throne room diorama for €100, including 5 minifigures, them being Jabba the Hutt, Bib Fortuna, Hutt Slayer Leia, Boba Fett, and Luke Skywalker. The reason I'm so confident in this one is because it was heavily rumoured to come out during the last wave instead of the Death Star throne room diorama, but it seems to have either been delayed or cancelled. I think it was just delayed because of the second reason I'm so confident in this one, and that's the massive 2024 survey leaks that came out a few months ago. In those, it came out that there is supposedly a massive UCS Jabba sail barge coming out. I'd wager is the November UCS set, which will almost definitely include a newly in production Jabba the Hutt mold. I imagine they just didn't want that presumably very expensive mold to be in production longer than it needs to be, so my guess is that they just delayed the Jabba's throne room diorama so that they could have both of these sets on sale at the same time. The other diorama is one that I kind of just randomly thought of the last day, and I've been just kind of slowly convincing myself about since, and that's a Wampa Cave diorama from episode 5. I think it'll be €90 and include 4 minifigures, kind of. I think it'll have Luke and Han in their snow gear, and it'll also have a molded Wampa big figure and a molded Tauntaun. There's also a world where this is just the inside of the cave with the Wampa and Luke. There hasn't been a hot space diorama yet, and I think this would make for a really interesting display piece as opposed to like a micro-scale assault set like the vignette Get with purchase a few years ago. I can imagine them doing some really great stuff with the textures of the cave and the pure white snow and stuff, so I'm fairly confident in this, weirdly. I mentioned earlier that the Midi-Scale collection won't replace the helmet collection, but will instead replace the brick-built characters' pseudo sub-theme. I say this because the brick-built characters have kind of already run out of steam, plus they were never officially a sub-theme, so nothing is really getting replaced in that way. With that said, I don't think the Midi-Scale collection will become an official sub-theme. I think they will make more display-focused sets like the Executor in Midi-Scale, but they will leave the collection label to the helmets and the dioramas. So, all things considered, I think next year we'll have 2 Midi-Scale sets. The first I think will be really safely and perhaps boringly a remake of the Midi-Scale Millennium Falcon, but for €90. It's bound to be remade eventually. It's a really solid addition to the sub-theme in general. You can't really go wrong with it. I'm surprised the Rise of Skywalker Falcon isn't retired yet, because I think a cheaper downscaled Falcon is actually pretty overdue. Last year I thought this would come in the form of an €100 playset, but maybe it'll come in the form of a Midi-Scale set instead with a nice black display stand and, unfortunately, no minifigures. The other Midi-Scale set I think will be a pretty cool one actually, with an Imperial shuttle for €80. I don't have any definitive reason for thinking this, I just think that the ship would pair well with the Falcon and look really good at that scale. Sticking to the original trilogy for this too, of course. I don't know, this one is kind of a gut feeling that I can just see happening for some reason. And finally, the May UCS set. Now this could be actually anything. Genuinely, with the UCS Jabba sail barge pretty much locked in for later this year, and LEGO going ahead with the UCS Venator this year, this could actually be any ship from any era, which is very exciting. There's actually so much things that could be here that I'm going to present 2 ideas as to what I think this could be. I couldn't choose between them, so here you go. If they decide to make a UCS set based on something they hadn't done before, I think this could be a UCS U-Wing for €300, and I think it would come with just 1 minifigure, that being a very high production quality U-Wing pilot. I think this will be $300 as opposed to $250 because I think a U-Wing at the UCS scale just needs the extra pieces and detail to look right. As for why the U-Wing specifically, I just think it's a ship that can make for a really cool UCS set. Honestly, I made this prediction before realizing that the U-Wing was very much a Rogue One ship, not an original Trilogy ship, but it still slots in nicely to that era, and it's been around long enough now that I wouldn't consider it overly niche either. It would be a pretty wild and kind of risky ship to make a UCS set out of, but I mean shit, they're doing a Venator, like is anything off the table anymore? If they decide to make a remake of a set, I think it'll be a redo of the UCS Slave 1, but now €300 as opposed to €200. This would come with 4 minifigures, them being Boba Fett from episode 6, Boba Fett from the Book of Boba Fett, Jango Fett, and a young Boba Fett from episode 2. I think the size will be pretty much the same as the previous, but it'll come with a bunch more pieces and probably look a lot better all around. Probably not enough to justify the upgrade if you already have the previous. The €300 price reflects this with just a slightly beefier build all around. It's been 8 years since the original UCS Slave 1 came out in 2015, which feels like not that long ago until you consider that the time difference between the first and second direct-to-consumer Batmobile sets, the Tumbler specifically, was just 7 years. I definitely don't think LEGO are above remaking it at this stage, with the price of the original and the secondary market being so high. I'd personally rather they not remake it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I would also be extremely curious to see if they call it the UCS Boba Fett Starship or not, cause if so, that'd be a really weird and clunky sounding name for it, so we'll see I guess. And yeah, those are all my predictions for the winter 2024 wave of LEGO Star Wars. If you can muster up the ability to come up with some new original trilogy set ideas, please share them with me. Otherwise, thanks for watching and farewell.